Rain, rain, please don't go away. I want to film a springtime study session today. In today's 1-hour study session, we will cover all areas of English, including reading, speaking, listening, vocabulary, grammar, and writing. I'll be honest, yesterday I was really struggling with what theme to use for today's study session. But then so many things came together that it felt like Kismet that I should do this rainy springtime theme. So why did it feel like destiny that we should do a spring theme today? Well, first, as I was looking for a free book to download on Project Gutenberg, one of the top recommendations was a classic novel called The Enchanting April. And I thought, wow, isn't that perfect? It's April right now as I'm filming this. So that was the first thing that made it feel like destiny. And the second thing that made it feel like fate was yesterday here in the United States, we experienced a solar eclipse, which felt quite magical. I had never experienced one before, and it was pretty cool and somewhat enchanting. The third thing that made it feel like a spring theme was meant to be was that it's raining today. And in the Northern Hemisphere, we have a saying that goes, April showers bring May flowers. So we have flowers, and then my husband had surprised me with this lovely floral mug a few days ago when he came home from a business trip in Washington, D.C. So with the book and the weather and the time of year and the cup, it just all felt like this is what must be done. We must do a spring, cozy, rainy day study session. So here's a quick breakdown of how today's study session will be structured. First, we're going to do 15 minutes of reading, in which we will also pick out 5 vocabulary words. Then we'll utilize those vocab words in our 10-minute vocabulary practice. After that, we're going to have a 15-minute writing practice, but that's not all. At the very end, we are going to do a listening comprehension quiz, where I am going to quiz you on different vocabulary, idioms, slang, whatever that I said throughout the video. And you have to check your understanding of those words or phrases. Sounds like fun, right? So let's discuss what you'll need for today's study session. First, you need something to read. So if you're in the middle of reading a book, just use that. Or if you would like to pick out a new book to read, I highly recommend something that's spring or nature themed. Today, I'll be reading The Enchanted April, and I'll be honest, I picked it out because of the name and because the front cover had flowers and stuff on it. I definitely do judge a book by its cover. So if you would also like to read The Enchanted April with me, I'll leave a link for that free download below. Or if you would like more recommendations for books, check out my reading recommendation guide. You will also need somewhere to write. I'm going to be using the 5x5 vocabulary study guide and my 365-day writing journey, both of which are available on Amazon and for download on my website. So you can definitely use those as well, or you can just write in a notebook or whatever. Since you will be quizzed on the vocabulary that I'm using throughout today's video, make sure you can hear me quite well. So you might want to watch this study session in a quieter room, or just make sure you turn up the volume on those headphones. We'll also be using the free weekly study planner at the end of today's video, which includes even more tips and tricks for how to integrate English into your daily life. And finally, you're going to need somewhere comfy and cozy to study, preferably with a yummy drink or tasty snack. In my study session episode 3, I talked about how you can create a comfy, cozy study area for little to no money. And this chair is no exception. The green chair that you usually see me in, I bought off a college student for $15 a few years ago. But this one I actually got for free because my neighbor was moving out of their house and they didn't want any of their furniture, so they just left it on the side of the road for anyone to pick up. So I saw this chair and I liked it. And now we have this lovely vintage cozy recliner for free. Actually, I ended up making money from that whole thing because my neighbor had put out a lot of furniture that was in perfect condition. So I brought it over here, spiffed it up a bit more, and I sold it online. So I think I made around $300 or something selling their unwanted furniture. So reselling furniture can actually be quite a lucrative side hustle. So along the theme of springtime and gardens, and because it is cold, and I learned my lesson last time, I'm not quite ready for a cold beverage, I decided to go for some refreshing yet warm peppermint tea today in my lovely cherry blossom mug that came from Washington, D.C. Let's see how it tastes. That's good. But I'll be honest, it has gotten a little bit cold because it took me longer than I thought to set up my camera and everything here in the living room. That's okay. It's still good. Do you have your fun reading material? Before we jump into reading, what have you decided to read today? Why did you pick it out? Excellent. So don't forget that as you're reading, you need to pick out at least 5 vocabulary words, which we will use in the next section of today's study session. Are you ready to start? 15 minutes of reading. Let's go. that's it for our 15 minutes of reading. What'd you think of your book? I'm really glad that I picked this one out. It was totally fitting for today. The beginning of this book does take place in February because, according to the synopsis that I read online, it's about a woman in England who sees an advertisement for an Italian vacation house to go to in April, but she sees it in February. And the setting for this opening scene is on a cold, rainy day in a storefront or something. And it feels so fitting because today it's cold and rainy outside, and I'm sitting in my living room with cars driving by. So I feel like I'm there with her in the rain with the cars and the vehicles. The only difference is I do have my dog here with me. So tell me, what happened in the portion of book that you read? So as I was reading mine, I definitely found a decent amount of vocabulary, but there were a few things that I thought were kind of interesting. So one was right here with the spelling of medieval. Nowadays, or at least in American English, we don't use that extra A in it. It would just be spelled this way, medieval, without that A. So I thought that that was something interesting to note. Also, the word Macintosh. So depending on how old you are, you might remember what a Macintosh was back in the 90s. Do you know what was a Macintosh back in the 90s? Yep, Apple products used to be called Macintosh. So the iMac was the iMacintosh. When I was in elementary school, we had Macintosh computers. Yeah, long time ago. But actually in this book, this Macintosh is definitely not a computer because I think this book was written in like the 40s or something. So this Macintosh is a British word for a long waterproof coat, which I just learned. I just had to look that up. But I just thought it was kind of funny how words have changed so much throughout history. Another phrase that I wanted to look at was this one right here. And I know you by sight. These days, instead of saying, I know you by sight, which actually sounds a little bit awkward, people instead say, I've seen you around. Or I've seen them around. This just means that you have seen that person, but you've never spoken to them directly before. So let's go through our reading and pick out those 5 vocab words. There were definitely a lot of good options throughout my reading, but some of them I just figured, maybe they aren't that important for me to practice. But one that I do like in here that I almost picked out is the term nest egg. It's always good to have a nest egg. An example of a nest egg is in this book, the main character is told by her husband that it's good to have a nest egg in case of a rainy day. So she always saves a little bit of her dress allowance from her father. I wish I had a dress allowance from my father. Can you guess what a nest egg is? If not, don't worry. We'll discuss it more at the end of today's study session in our listening vocab section. So I picked out the words litany, because I honestly cannot remember what it means. Solicitor. Now, I picked out solicitor because I see this used a lot in British English, like with older British shows or books, and I don't know what it is. It's some kind of job, but I can never remember what a solicitor is. Then I also picked out the word negligible because I know the main definition of it, but it seemed to have been used differently in The Enchanted April. I also picked out enviable because honestly, I think it'll be nice to use in today's writing section, so I cheated a little bit. And then I picked out listless because it has a very different definition than what you may imagine. Can you guess what listless may mean? So what 5 words did you choose today? Now that you have your 5 words, we are going to look up their definitions and their parts of speech in our 10-minute vocabulary practice. If you finish before the 10 minutes is up, use that extra time to go back and review the words. I also highly recommend looking at how frequently used or trending the words are that you're looking up. So if you're using Google to check the words, this can really easily be done by just clicking on that show more, and most words have a little graph where it shows how frequently the word has been used throughout history. But of course, if you aren't able to finish in the 10 minutes, just pause the video so that you can complete today's vocabulary task before moving on to the writing section. So, 10 minutes of vocab. Let's get started. Okay, that's it for the vocabulary section. I'll be honest, I did finish early and then I went back to reading the book a little bit more. I'm really enjoying this one so much more than I thought. You know, classical literature is not really my cup of tea. Hey, but this one is quite fun, and I think it's probably because I feel like I am there with the characters on their rainy day. I really do love reading on rainy days. When I was growing up in Seattle, I hated rainy days. But now, as an adult that had quit reading for quite a few years and has recently gotten back into it, I really enjoy reading on rainy days. I kind of like to romanticize my life a little bit and just imagine myself as the main character of a story reading next to a window on a rainy day, even if I am just in my living room with a studio light on me and people walking by in front of my house. It's not glamorous, but I like to imagine that it is. So one of the words that I was pretty shocked about was solicitor. I really thought that a solicitor was some kind of salesperson, but nope, apparently with British English, it is a lawyer or legal representative. But when I looked at the little trending chart, it seems like they don't use the term solicitor too often anymore. And we can see with a few of these other words, some of them are trending more, like litany is becoming more popular. So this would be a good word to learn. But negligible, surprisingly, was rarely used. In the 1950s, it really had its heyday, and it's becoming much less common. But I wonder why. I wonder if there was some reason for it becoming quite popular in the 50s. And then the word enviable, I'm kind of surprised that it's going down, especially because we all compare ourselves and become so envious on social media, but maybe there are other words that people are using. And then listless, I couldn't find any kind of trend report for it. But did you guess that this was the definition of listless? Too tired or uninterested to want to do anything. Were you correct with your guess earlier? For some extra speaking practice, go ahead and read your words plus their definitions out loud, making sure to be very careful about pronunciation and enunciation. It's time for today's writing assignment. In the My 365-Day Writing Journey, April is all about nature and environment. How perfect is that for our book that has this garden and nature theme? See, I told you, it's Kismet. So we're going to be working on the April 6th prompt, which is reflect on how your connection to nature has evolved over the years. Has it improved or gotten worse? So essentially, how have your feelings about nature changed? Did you maybe love playing in nature as a kid and now as an adult you really don't like it? Or is it the opposite? Maybe as a kid you hated being outside and now you're a bit of a tree hugger. How have your preferences changed? As a grammar note, you will have to use a few different tenses. So obviously, when you're writing about the past, you will need to use past tense. When you're writing about your current preferences, you'll need to use present tense. I like doing this or I like to do this. And make sure to include as many details as possible so that the reader, even if no one is actually reading it, can really understand your feelings. Try to paint a picture of how you felt, of what your relationship was like with nature. Now, if you have already completed this prompt, whether you already filled it out in your My 365-Day Journey, or this is not your first time following along with today's study session video, go ahead and follow this prompt. And as always, try to incorporate as much vocabulary as possible from today's vocabulary section. 15 minutes of writing. Are you ready? Let's get started. Okay. 15 minutes of writing is all done. My camera overheated and I did have to turn it off for a little bit, but rest assured, I did use the whole 15 minutes to do my writing. So I didn't cheat, and neither should you. So tell me, has your relationship with nature improved or has it gotten worse as you've gotten older? Mine has definitely improved. While I did grow up living in or near a forest for most of my childhood, and I played outside with all my brothers and sisters every day during the summer, I didn't necessarily enjoy or appreciate nature. I just played outside because my parents didn't want us inside all day. They kicked us out and we had nothing else to do. So yeah, we played outside, but it wasn't always by choice. And I also was not very physically fit as a kid, so activities like hiking, walking up hills, those were pretty difficult when I was younger. So that also made the great outdoors feel a little less great. What about our vocabulary words? Were you able to incorporate all 5 of the words that we studied today? I'm usually able to use all of the words that I pick out during the vocab section, but today I did not even make an attempt to use the word solicitor because that's useless. I'm not going to try and use a British legal representative in my writing about nature and going outside. So, if there are words that you feel really don't fit, don't worry about it. Save them for another writing assignment. For our final speaking and fluency practice, I want you to read your writing assignment out loud. Now, here's where the fluency part comes in. I want you to really pay attention to your punctuation marks, those commas, periods, question marks, exclamation points, and have that really guide the intonation and your pauses as you're speaking. So, for example, if there's a comma, you do need to pause a little bit. And generally, your voice should go down. Same with a period. If there's a period at the end of the sentence, you need to pause and your intonation should also go down. But if you have a question mark, then your intonation should go up because it's a question. And if you have an exclamation point, you should give it more emphasis because it's loud or exciting or full of emotion. So go ahead and read your assignment out loud. That was great. I understand that it's not always a necessary skill for everyone to practice reading things out loud. However, it is really good for you to practice how to have your intonation change throughout a sentence so that you're easier to understand. If your inflection always goes up at the end of a sentence, maybe people will think that you're always asking questions. Or if it stays exactly the same all the time and you have no intonation at all, then you're going to sound like a robot. And no one wants to sound like a robot. So, practicing your intonation and inflection is a key part of improving your English fluency. So I don't always read you my writing assignment, but I will today because I want you to hear the way that my tone and inflection changes throughout a sentence. And I'm going to be using some of the words and phrases in here in the vocabulary quiz coming up in just a moment. So definitely pay attention. As a kid and teenager, I used to hate going hiking and camping with my family. I would always come up with a litany of excuses so that I wouldn't have to go into the wilderness and surround myself with dirt and bugs. On the off chance that I was forced to go, I probably made my family miserable with my listless demeanor. Sorry, Mom. However, my whole outlook on nature seemingly took a 180-degree turn after I lived in South Korea. The places I lived and visited were extremely urban, so there were almost no trees to be seen. Nowadays, I love camping and hiking with my family, and I especially love watching how much joy it brings to my dogs. I still hate spiders, ticks, and mosquitoes, but seeing my dogs gleefully romp around the forest makes all those negative things seem negligible. So, as soon as my dog's hip is fully recovered, he still has another month until his surgery is fully recovered, we will continue discovering the adventurous hikes and enviable views that our state has to offer. Yeah, I am certain that I made my family miserable when I was a teen because I had a really bad attitude about doing most things together as a family. So, sorry, family. But now I like doing family stuff. Finally, I like hiking. So the things that I dislike most about nature are definitely the bugs, the creepy crawly bugs. Some of them are kind of cool to look at, but in general, spiders, hate them. Ticks are quite dangerous, and mosquitoes, they're awful. And I also don't love when the weather is too hot. That's something that I can't handle very well. But what about you? What is something that you maybe dislike about nature? On the flip side, I love seeing different animals in nature. When we used to camp in Texas, we could see lizards, armadillos, which I had never seen before. They were really cool, but they did break into our tent one time and they ate my husband's muffins. So that wasn't great. But we could see a lot of really cool animals. We saw moose one time when we were hiking in Colorado. And here where we live in Arkansas, the trees are gorgeous. In the fall, they were all different shades of oranges and yellows and reds. And I'm really excited to hike soon, whenever my dog is all healed, because now all the trees are so lush and green. Like the trees that I'm looking at right now in my front yard just turned green in only the past few days, I would say. They were still a little dry and shriveled from winter, but now they are full of leaves, big, juicy green leaves. So what is your favorite part about nature? Now, if you are working in your 365-day writing journey, before we move on to our final vocabulary comprehension section, let's go ahead and check off our English skills that we practiced today. So, writing is already checked for us. We did our listening, which we'll check even more in just a moment. We did our reading at the beginning of our lesson. Ooh, we've got some thunder. And you have been speaking throughout today's study session. I hope you've had those listening ears activated throughout our whole study session, because now it's time for our listening vocabulary extravaganza quiz. Let's get started. But then so many things came together that it felt like Kismet that I should do this rainy springtime theme. I picked it out because of the name and because the front cover had flowers and stuff on it. I definitely do judge a book by its cover. So I brought it over here, spiffed it up a bit more, and I sold it online. So, reselling furniture can actually be quite a lucrative side hustle. So, reselling furniture can actually be quite a lucrative side hustle. The main character is told by her husband that it's good to have a nest egg in case of a rainy day, so she always saves a little bit of her dress allowance from her father. The main character is told by her husband that it's good to have a nest egg in case of a rainy day. You know, classical literature is not really my cup of tea. I kind of like to romanticize my life a little bit. But rest assured, I did use the whole 15 minutes to do my writing. On the off chance that I was forced to go, the places I lived and visited were extremely urban, so there were almost no trees to be seen. So how'd you do on today's listening and vocabulary quiz? In the comment section, write a sentence about springtime or nature using one of the words that we just discussed in the vocabulary quiz. I will go through and provide free grammar and vocabulary corrections to everyone who participates. And if you enjoyed today's rainy day, springtime, cozy study session, make sure to like and subscribe for more videos just like this. and hit that bell icon so that you can get notified every week when I post a video to help you along your English learning journey. And remember, these study session videos can be watched again and again to help give you some guidance and structure in your English studying routine. So, you can definitely watch this one a few more times, or you can check out a whole playlist of other ones right over here. But if you're done with your studying today, I think you'll really enjoy this video right over here. Happy studying, and I'll see you later.